Hi, friends. It's Searching for Answers, the program in which we dig into the Bible, line by line, verse by verse, sometimes word by word, as we analyze the stream of thought of the author, what it meant when the text was originally written, what it means in our lives today. So get your Bibles. We're in the middle of the epistle to the Hebrews. Fascinating but complex interwoven themes of argument are really important for our Christian lives still today. Dr. Bernard Taylor, Old Testament scholar, Dr. William Johnson, New Testament scholar who has devoted particular attention to this important and fascinating letter, the Epistle to the Hebrews, Pastor Beverly Maravilla in Family Ministries at La Sierra University Church, and Leo Ranzelin, a New Testament scholar here at Loma Linda University. My name is John Jones at La Sierra University, and here we go. We've been looking at the line of thought which interweaves then and now, the author's now, that is to say 2,000 years ago, but that now applies to our now in many ways as well. Our problem, of course, is that the whole concept and structure of sacrificial worship, of ritual ceremony, is a little bit lost on us. It was a natural part of their thinking in those days, but of contamination, of purification, of how blood cleanses, all of that is a bit of a reach for us, as we were talking about last time. But the line of thought continues, Bill, and so I'll invite you to pick us up with verse 15 and following to see how this is going to really come to a head here and play out for us in chapter 9 of the Epistle to the Hebrews.
Okay. As I read, notice how often the term blood will come up. Verse 15, for this reason, he's the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance. Because a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions under the first covenant. Where a will is involved, the death of the one who made it must be established. For a will takes effect only at death, since it is not in force as long as the one who made it is alive. Hence, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment had been told to all the people by Moses in accordance with the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wood and hyssop and sprinkled both the scroll itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant that God has ordained for you." And in the same way, he sprinkled with the blood both the tent and all the vessels used in worship. Indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood. And without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin. It's at least 6 or 7 times there.
Yeah. So the illustration now is taken from someone who makes a will. And we need to recognize that that word will in our English translates the same Greek word as we also translate with covenant. It's the same word. And so the thought naturally flows from when a person makes a will, the will does not go into effect until the person dies. That's a simple, essential point. And so there must be a death. In the old way, it was death of an animal, but in a new way, in the new system, it's a different death, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Jesus then is not only the high priest who administers the blood, but provides the actual sacrifice as well. Jesus is many things in Hebrews in this letter, but especially these two things, priest and sacrifice combined together. Anything else from your side, Bill, that comes out here?
I'll come back to this, this term translated testament or will, the same word, diatheke. It's interesting, in Galatians chapter 2, you find the same thing. And the discussion and argument has been, does he really shift from covenant to will and then back to covenant? So what do you make of this? I remember writing a scholarly article on this passage years and years ago
Yeah.
when I was young and tender, and arguing that he really is consistent. It is covenant throughout. Now, some have argued that it is will throughout, and I don't think that stands up because he's already talked about covenant.
Sure.
And it's a little bit tricky if you say he's saying covenant and then he goes to will, same word, however, but he means will. It's possible, but I have to say it's a little bit too clever for me. So maybe I'm biased by what I wrote years ago. I think it is covenant throughout, but that has some problems because the death of the one who makes the covenant, how you deal with that. So anyway, there I am. Sorry to throw a spanner in the works here.
Actually, no, it works for us. We don't generally throw Greek around here on camera, but if we just didn't translate it, if we would say a diatheke takes effect only at death, and then so we have the first diatheke and the second dia. There we then really sound like the original author sounded.
That's right.
And
That's
really
right.
Holding it all together.
Yeah.
But John, let's complicate it for Bill here, because what he's really saying in verse 16, for where a covenant is, it is necessary to establish the death of the testator, of the one who
That's
made
the weakness in my
the
argument.
covenant. So what are you
It's right
saying,
there.
Bill?
How did you find it?
What are you saying? I'm inclined to will, because I think it handles the problems. It's not easy. But what would you say to that? It is necessary to establish the death of the testator.
But with a covenant, there was always death involved. Okay.
It was always what?
Death involved.
Okay.
And the animals, the death of animals, of course, were associated with the person making the covenant. Okay. There's that sort of association. It's a little weak, I confess. Okay. I'm not going to put. I'm not going to bet a ranch on this. Okay.
See, if you take will, as John said, what he seems to be saying is a death ratifies the new covenant, you see, right?
Oh, yeah, he's
That's what
saying
it
that.
does.
Yeah.
So-
But is he going from covenant to will? Maybe he is.
Yeah.
It sounds,
the dilemma.
It sounds more persuasive now, coming back. John is sort of almost persuading me.
That's close enough.
Could I put it in a larger context?
Yeah.
When the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, the Septuagint, the Hebrew word is berit, and it means covenant. But in all but a very few, well, let me get behind that. The Greek word for covenant is suntheke.
Yeah.
The word that is used here is diatheke. You can hear the basic relationship. Suntheke is a covenant. But that word never occurs in the New Testament, only diatheke. And only 12, 14 times in the Septuagint do we have suntheke, never about God, and mostly in later literature, even into the Apocrypha. So this word diatheke, which means will, in classical Greek, in the common Greek, it means will. And for some reason, and perhaps because of the divine relationship as opposed to the human relationship, except in all types of relationships, it's diatheke. So this Greek word came to mean in Christian circles covenant, although it always was a will. And then it was translated into Latin, and in the New Testament, Jerome knew his Greek, and he translated with testamentum, novum testamentum, the New Testament. He did that because that's what the Greek word meant in the New Testament, not because he wasn't trying to make it difficult, but when there was no Hebrew behind it, then he translated it as testament, which is what it is. And both of these are here. For the Christian, it's the word for covenant. and our Bible should be the New Covenant.
Yeah.
The New Covenant.
Yes.
That's the name of the Bible, but through Jerome's Latin, we have New Testament. And so there are these two meanings, and one never outgrew the other. So in secular circles, it's always a will, a testament, something that goes into effect at death. In connection with the Hebrew Bible, it's covenant. Now, not every covenant involves death. When Jacob and Laban made a covenant, nobody died over that. And so this was a common word both for the horizontal, amongst equals, basically, or, human, may have a king and the people and those sorts of things. But on the other hand, we have in the secular world, and it always retained that. That was the word that was for it. And in fact, there is supposed to be one instance in classical Greek, one or two, where it's said to have the meaning covenant, but I don't see it and a lot of others don't either. But here in this word, in chapter 9, we have this perfect opportunity to bridge two worlds. It's a will, it's a testament, goes into effect at death. And without missing a beat, you stay with the same word and you've opened up a whole new direction.
Good.
So, and again, Jeremiah 31 is lurking in the background behind it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Covenant, new covenant.
And it's the word there too. Yes.
And now that you bring up Jeremiah, we
Yeah.
should underscore the fact that this is one of Israel's prophets, right? Because I've wrestled with the issue of continuity and discontinuity here. Again and again, the accent seemed to be in discontinuity with the new covenant realities. But let's not forget, right, that it was the prophet Jeremiah who spoke of the dawn of a new day in which Yahweh would refashion a people with these spiritual realities that we've spoken of, that he gets sketched there in the previous chapter. And the other thing that I think bears pointing out, we haven't gotten to this in chapter 10, there's going to be a prophetic critique on sacrifices, underscoring the importance of obedience, trumping sacrifice. So these are connections with Israel's story. Prophet Jeremiah, speaking of the dawn of a new covenant, and a prophetic critique of sacrifices, underscoring the importance of obedience. Those are threads of continuity for me
Yes, yes.
that I think are important to note.
So while this epistle to the Hebrews concentrates on things priestly and ceremonial, still the voice of the prophet comes through
Right.
for moral and ethical living,
Right.
doesn't it? Yeah. Thus, those two roots deep in Hebraic thought really get converged, don't they, here in this Christian writing. Interesting. What else awaits our attention here?
Well, I'll jump in with verse 22, which I think is a key verse in the reasoning of chapters 9 and 10. Almost everything is purified with blood. Under the Old Testament, a few things were not. And without shedding of blood. Now, that's very, very interesting. We're sort of strong on the Greek here today in the languages. That is a word, again, it's a word that doesn't occur anywhere else in the New Testament or in literature, not until the 2nd century. And so what does it mean? I think the way I would translate it is application of blood rather than shedding of blood. I think if you go back and look at the context, he's talking about the blood being sprinkled on the tent, on the book, on the people. And then he says, it's not talking about killing of animals in this paragraph. It's talking about applying the blood. And so in my work on Hebrews, I argued for this, that it means, this word, we don't know, it doesn't occur anywhere else. I argued application. And shortly afterwards, an article came out in scholarly literature arguing the same thing, a different point of view. But I wouldn't make a big deal over it, except the real point is the power of blood as a cleansing agent. That's the point. Okay. Yeah, that's the point. Which takes us to the blood of Christ as a supreme purifying agent to take away all our guilt and our sin.
So in light of that, what motifs of the atonement come through with what Dr. Johnson just said? Because we speak of, there's these motifs in the New Testament of the cross as a demonstration of God's love, a cross as a place in which the demonic powers are vanquished, the Christus Victor, the cross as a sacrifice, the cross understood in terms of substitutionary atonement, penal substitution. What contribution, perhaps Dr. Johnson, do you see Hebrews making to that aspect, that doctrine of the atonement?
Sacrifice.
The cross as sacrifice.
The cross is sacrifice, yes. Again, a word that's, I would say, not popular because it's not in our thinking. Okay? And often we have negative associations with that, because of paganism, pagan sacrifice, and so on. But if you understand it in the context of defilement and purification, in that context, I see it as something very positive. Something that, I wish we could recapture, because I think there are deep truths here that speak to the needs of humanity today. People who feel dirty, who feel just ugly, okay, who feel the need to be cleaned up. Over and over, people who are having problems feel dirty, over and over. And Jesus makes us clean. It's by his blood. I think there are great truths to be restored here, but Hebrews is neglected, and so those truths are not being proclaimed.
There's the problem. Right.
But let's not forget what he's trying to do in 9:15 through 22. He's underscoring the inauguration of the Sinai covenant and what Moses did and how that was ushered in with blood.
Yeah.
And he's made the point earlier that the new covenant is also inaugurated with the shed blood of Jesus Christ. And it's his shed blood and sacrifice that's unblemished to God that qualifies him now to be the mediator of this awesome, better new covenant.
The letter to the Romans connects forgiveness of sin with juridical language, the language of the courtroom and of legality and so forth. Here, the word forgiveness in verse 22 does appear, but it appears under a different umbrella.
Exactly.
An umbrella of ceremony, of sacrifice, but now it is sacrifice that really carries forward, that punches through, right? In a way that it did not somehow in the traditional Judaic system.
The root meaning, John, is, of course, is taking away. Root meaning behind forgiveness, taking away.
Yeah, the taking away of sin, vanquishing, causing to vanish.
Removal,
Maybe we should bring in 9:26 here. We're going to get to that. But now, once and for all, at the consummation of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin through the sacrifice of himself.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So this points back to, the first appearance of Christ. That's why he came, to put away sin through the sacrifice of himself.
I wish I could find a way to bring this across to modern people. Because I think there's something deeply, deeply needed here. But, the language, at face value is, it turns us off. It's foreign, it's strange.
Exactly.
But to get through that language and to share the great truths that God is giving us here, that's the quest.
Well, it is. Rituals can become routinized and can lose their punch. In fact, there are hints, not of the transition that we see in the New Testament, but there are hints toward the close of the Old Testament that is what is happening. We think of Malachi, indeed, where the priests themselves are beginning to detest what they're doing. And God says, well, hey, you turn up your noses and you complain that my temple smells like a slaughterhouse. Who gave you the idea that I like this? So the whole rug is beginning to be pulled out, although what is to replace it does not yet emerge, as something you said a couple conversations ago, Bernard. And so the stage is set now, and we probably will not be able to fully complete all we have to say in chapter 9, but somebody take verse 23 and following and at least get us down through the end of chapter 9 as we read the text. Who would like to do that?
I can read it. You want to read it?
Go for it.
It was necessary then for the copies of the heavenly things to be purified with these sacrifices, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with human hands that was only a copy of the true one. He entered heaven itself, now to appear for us in God's presence. Nor did he enter heaven to offer himself again and again, the way the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood that is not his own. Otherwise, Christ would have had to suffer many times since the creation of the world. But he has appeared once for all at the culmination of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself, just as people are destined to die once and after that to face judgment. So Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many, and he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him.
Yeah, today's English is particularly effective, I think, in that paragraph. What do you think?
Well, I can tell you that commentators of Hebrews just about tear their hair out with verse 23. What can he mean? Because it talks about the necessity for heavenly things to be purified. And like a French commentator says, this is nonsense, Heavenly things don't need to be purified. But I think if we stay with it, with the author, from the beginning, starting at 1:3 and work through, we get a better idea. I think what he is saying, I understand him to say, is that Christ's death has cosmic ramifications. Okay. Christ's death makes everything right again. It makes it right here on earth, but right throughout the universe. So, and there's hints of that elsewhere, of course, in Paul's writings about the cosmic effect of his death on the cross.
In my research, I found 3 options.
Yeah.
Option number 1, that this refers to the inauguration, dedication, consecration of the heavenly sanctuary. Option number 2 is what you referred to, Bill. Heaven itself, in a cosmic sense, the cosmos has been infected with sin and therefore needs to be cleansed and purified. And then the third one kind of does a metaphorical, symbolic take of it, where it's God's people are cleansed, their consciences are cleansed. I'm not sure.
It doesn't fit, though.
Yeah, it doesn't. Right.
That doesn't fit. He talks about the people elsewhere.
Right.
He's talking about heavenly things.
But he does talk about the necessity of the people's consciousness being cleansed.
Oh, yeah, he does.
And so they interpret that phrase as referring to that.
Yeah.
I like the one option that you've referred to of this cosmic sense of sins being defiled by sin, and
Again,
therefore needing cleansing and purification.
The author's taking us back to the cross, and how easily we forget the ramifications of the cross. Cosmic ramification. It's the cross where things are made right. Things in heaven and on earth are made right through the cross.
For me, at least, blood is speaking of shedding of blood, is a way of talking about death. That this is the death. Now, in a priestly cultic setting, there are other factors involved, But what has spoken to me here, along with the comments that have been made, is the frequency of the word once for all.
Yes. Yes.
Once for all. This sharp contrast. It's not that there's less. That would be an argument that maybe somebody could make or something, but it's this once. It's done. It is finished. And it's all a present reality, and yet there is so much more yet to come. But here is a stunning interpretation that everything is packed into that once for all. No need to do it again. The sacrifice, the purification, all of this is taken care of, and you want to go back to all that unlimited indefiniteness that went on year by year and was repetitive, and all the things that we've said. Once for all. What a contrast. There's no equivalent.
There's no equivalent because it's the unique evidence of the efficacy, of the effectiveness, of the definitive character of what has happened, isn't it?
Yes.
So this erases as you say, the uncertainty. The once and for allness of it is a way of saying that proves that it worked.
Yeah.
And still works for us. Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And highlights again the daily sacrifices, the yearly sacrifice, and the most holy. Those were just inadequate, ineffective. They did not truly take care of sin. But there needed to be this once and for all sacrifice, unblemished, unrepeatable, perfect, to truly deal with the problem of sin.
I think the problem of sin is being redefined, and that it's being internalized. You've said it already in a previous conversation, Leo. It moves inward to the conscience now in a new way, and thus it's the difference between earthly and heavenly is the difference between before and after. Also, in an interesting way there. So, to remove sin by the sacrifice of himself, priests made sacrifices, but not of themselves. There was a close connection between the sacrificial animal and the one who presented the animal. You put your hands on the head of that animal and you confess your sins. And so the animal becomes a kind of surrogate in a way. But here there's no surrogation happening, except in that Christ does this on our behalf. But that's the extent of it. So here we are. It's once and for all at the end of the age, and that makes it eschatological. The beginning of the last days comes with that sacrifice, as we will continue thinking next time together on Searching for Answers.